Pirating used to be the act of attacking and robbing ships at sea. However, it began to take on a different meaning in the early 1700s. Nowadays, piracy has become a huge industry with entertainment like music, software, games, and streaming media. Estimates suggest that global digital piracy results in annual revenue losses exceeding $75 billion for the media sector alone, with projections climbing to $125 billion by 2028. Now let's go back to when it all began. During the mid-17th century, London booksellers and printers faced growing competition. They began referring to printers who reprinted books without authorization as land pirates, directly connecting book copying to the crime of robbing ships at sea. In 1710, the world's first copyright law was enacted, called the Statute of Anne. With the introduction of the printing press to England by William Caxton in 1476, printed works became both more common and more economically important. In the late 16th and early 17th centuries, London's book trade faced a crisis due to rampant piracy. Over 300 unauthorized presses flooded the market with cheap editions of popular works like Shakespeare's plays, Bibles, and almanacs. The Stationers' Company, which held official printing privileges, suffered significant financial losses, estimated in the tens of thousands of pounds annually. Authors were particularly disadvantaged, as they received no royalties. Printers claimed perpetual copyrights, retaining full control and profits over published works. This lack of authorial rights and the proliferation of piracy destabilized the trade, creating tension between authorized printers, pirates, and writers. The situation persisted until the Statute of Anne began establishing modern copyright principles, granting authors limited-term rights. In the early 1990s, new technologies like photolithography enabled infringers to make highly accurate, unauthorized copies of sheet music at low cost. This led to an asymmetry between pirates and music publishers, as enforcement of copyrights was expensive and often difficult. At a conference in New York City in 1905, music publisher George W. Furness complained that, while pirates could print illicit copies quickly and for about $10 to $15, it will cost several $100s to capture a few pirated copies, with no chance of getting any relief from the individuals in that line of business. Furthermore, the high accuracy of photographic reproduction sometimes made it difficult for investigators to positively identify counterfeits. Simultaneously, innovations like player pianos and phonographs introduced ambiguities in copyright law. Prior to 1909, U.S. copyright protected only visually perceptible forms, such as sheet music, leaving mechanical reproductions unprotected. The landmark Supreme Court case Whitesmith Music Publishing Company versus Apollo Company, 1908, ruled that piano rolls were not copies under existing law, as they required machines to be read and fell more under patent than copyright jurisdiction. This decision highlighted the law's inadequacy for sound-based media. The recording industry itself was nascent, with phonographs initially marketed as novelties for voice replication rather than music distribution. Early duplicates of cylinders and discs were common, but companies competed on sound quality rather than exclusivity. Artists like Russell Hunting criticized piracy primarily for degrading audio fidelity, not for infringing on creative labor. Historian Alex Safe Cummings argues in his 2013 book, Democracy of Sound, that consumers viewed duplicate recordings as separate products, not direct theft, reflecting a market that hadn't yet prioritized originality and sound fixes. In the UK, the piracy crisis peaked with sheet music peddlers undercutting originals by half, contributing to composers' impoverishment. This prompted the Musical Copyright Act of 1906, T.P. O'Connor Bill, which criminalized unauthorized printing and sales, enabling raids and seizures, but notably exempted piano rolls and records. Enforcement involved hired ex-soldiers and police targeting presses and street vendors, inspiring the 1945 film I'll Be Your Sweetheart. The U.S. responded with the Copyright Act of 1909, extending protection to mechanical reproductions of compositions, but withholding copyright from sound recordings themselves. This gap allowed record duplication to flourish unchecked at the federal level for decades. The 1909 Act set the stage for further evolution, but piracy persisted as technology advanced. In the 1910s to 1920s, radio broadcasting emerged, creating new tensions. Broadcasters played records without compensating composers or labels, leading to the formation of performance rights organizations like ASCAP, 1914, to collect royalties for public performances. However, sound recordings remained unprotected federally, relying on state laws or common law claims against unfair competition. By the 1930s to 1950s, bootlegging, unauthorized recordings of live performances or repressings of out-of-print records, gained traction among jazz and blues enthusiasts. Collectors and small operators filled market gaps left by major labels, often arguing their actions preserved cultural artifacts. Alex Safe Cummings describes this era as one where piracy democratized access, influencing copyright debates by blurring lines between theft and innovation. Mafia involvement in counterfeit records during Prohibition added a criminal layer, but enforcement was sporadic. The 1960s through 1970s saw escalating pressure from the industry amid tape cassette proliferation, which enabled home copying. Landmark cases like Capitol Records versus Mercury Records, 1955, offered limited protections under state laws, but federal reform lagged. Finally, the Sound Recording Amendment of 1971, effective 1972, granted federal copyright to new sound recordings, prohibiting unauthorized duplication, distribution, and performance. But pre-1972 recordings remained under state jurisdiction until the Music Modernization Act of 2018 extended federal protections retroactively. This long arc underscores how piracy drove legal adaptations, balancing creator rights with public access in an ever-evolving tech landscape. In the late 1990s, music piracy in its modern digital form emerged with the internet and file-sharing technologies. Platforms like Napster allowed users to share MP3 files freely, bypassing copyright laws and sparking widespread unauthorized distribution. This led to high-profile lawsuits, including those by Metallica and Dr. Dre, resulting in Napster's shutdown in 2001 under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, DMCA. Successors like LimeWire faced similar fates, closing after legal battles. Sites like the Pirate Bay exploited legal loopholes by not hosting files directly, but providing torrents, operating under jurisdictions like Sweden, where such practices were initially tolerated. Over time, piracy shifted from peer-to-peer networks to streaming rippers and unauthorized download sites. While early piracy drastically reduced physical sales, the rise of legal streaming services like Spotify has mitigated some impacts by offering affordable access. Spotify and other on-demand streaming services are offering a way for consumers to still get their music for free, while also contributing to the musicians in a small way, instead of simply illegally downloading the music. But it also moves customers away from buying hard copies of music, or even legally downloading songs, which also reduces artists' income. It was also around this time that video games and movies started becoming popular, and like any other media, they started getting pirated. Video game companies have long blamed emulators for promoting piracy, despite users being able to legally create ROM images from original media. This stems from incidents like the 1999 Connectix Virtual Game Station, a commercial PlayStation emulator for Macintosh that was cracked to run pirated ISOs, prompting a Sony lawsuit. The debate persists because emulators are essential for preserving out-of-print games unplayable on defunct consoles, especially as modern remasters often alter gameplay, such as the rewritten physics in Crash Bandicoot N. Trilogy, requiring more precise jumps. Some companies continue aggressive stances against emulators. Atlas tried to shut down a Patreon for the PS3 emulator RPCS3 over Persona 5 compatibility in 2017, while Nintendo sued ROM sites in 2018 and issued a 2020 cease and desist to a Super Smash Bros. Tournament using Dolphin with the Slippy mod. Ironically, companies employ emulation themselves. Nintendo's Virtual Console, the PS4's internal PSP emulator, revealed via Parappa the Rapper Remastered, and Xbox One's proprietary emulators for original Xbox and 360 games. Modding consoles also contributed to video game piracy by enabling unauthorized copies and bypassing DRM, though they also support legal homebrew games and backups, fueling ongoing debates. A key example is the original Microsoft Xbox, where soft mods installed via controller ports allow UI overhauls, game installation, and playback from the internal hard drive, media viewing, and even restored online play post-2010 Xbox Live shutdown, alongside hard mod options for hardware upgrades. In response, companies like Nintendo have collaborated with law enforcement, including the 2007 Operation Tangled Web, to seize mod chips and a crackdown on R4 flash cartridges for the DS, which were banned in Japan and elsewhere by 2009. Further actions include a 2018 UK arrest for Nintendo Switch modding and the 2020 US Department of Justice indictment of 2 Team Executor members for developing circumvention devices to play pirated ROMs. Nowadays, torrenting pirated games remains the popular choice among those who engage in piracy. Efforts to thwart illegal torrenting have historically failed because its decentralized nature makes it effectively impossible to totally dismantle. Movie piracy is as old as the film industry itself, evolving alongside technological advancements and changing consumer behaviors. It started with making illegal copies of films on VHS tapes, DVDs, or Blu-rays, and selling or distributing them without authorization, including camcording in theaters. With the creation of the internet, film piracy has largely moved online. This includes downloading movies from torrent sites and streaming movies through unauthorized websites or services. Movie piracy inflicts severe financial damage on the entire film industry by slashing box office earnings and eroding revenue from legitimate sales of DVDs, Blu-rays, and digital downloads, leaving filmmakers, producers, and distributors with substantial losses. For independent studios and smaller productions, which often operate on razor-thin margins, these stolen profits can prove catastrophic, sometimes jeopardizing their very survival. Today, some of the most pirated products are TV shows, movies, and video games, with no sign of stopping. A very popular slogan is, "If owning isn't buying, pirating isn't stealing." This comes from digital media, where you buy a product, but you don't own it. Before, you would buy a physical product, but these days you buy most products digitally. In Steam, when you buy a product, you purchase a license to use it, which can be revoked if your account is banned or if the service shuts down. In my opinion, one of the easiest ways to stop most pirating is to make the product easily consumable. Spotify is a great example. They stream music for free with ads or a paid subscription. Spotify's easily navigable app and seamless usage is a win for most people. Most normal people would rather watch ads or pay a subscription than go to a random website and download music individually. And if you don't know what you're doing, you have the potential to get malware. Netflix is another streaming service where you can watch movies and TV shows with a subscription. At first, people loved it, but with time, it became more expensive, and different streaming platforms emerged, making it so that if you want to watch a specific movie, you have to get the streaming platform it's on, encourages pirating. It looks like piracy is here to stay for the foreseeable future.